Yolanda, thank you for your interest and assistance in the PP Settlement Reunion Project. We are both dedicated to the preservation of our family's history. I am Shirley Pritchard Nolan. I am the daughter of Lawrence and Hazel Anderson Pritchard, and I am a member of Historical Eden Baptist Church. Hello, YouTube family. When I think of a community reunion, my mind rewinds to many community events of my youth. London Basket Meeting, Roxabelle Baptizing, Big Rock, and Eden Baptist Church anniversary every year. The Ralston Pike County Community Reunion will reunite these families. Let us come together and have a fun-filled day. The PP Settlement Reunion Committee, we are sponsoring a reunion with a purpose. September the 7th, Yatanji Park, Chillicothe, Ohio. Entertainment, DJ, food trucks, vendors, and history display at the Pump House. Trolley tour, including David Nickens Museum, and much, much more. September the 8th is the Eden Baptist Church will be celebrating 200 years of faithful service to the Pike County community. Reverend Milton J. Dean Sr. is our pastor. The PP Settlement Reunion has a mission to recognize, restore, and preserve 5 cemeteries: the Eden, Pritchard, Roberts, Davis, and Barnett cemeteries. The Davis and Barnett cemeteries are in serious condition and need immediate help. Please join the PP Settlement Reunion Group on Facebook and receive reunion updates. I am sure you will enjoy the following videos and interviews. Thank you for viewing and thank you for your support, and God bless you.
Oh, viewing audience, do I have a treat for you? I have Beverly Gray, and oh my gosh, you know what? When I hear about people that are preserving history, it just inspires me so much. But when you have a person like her, and she is an amazing individual. But Beverly Gray, how are you doing today?
I'm just tolerable, thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, I understand that there's going to be a big event coming up with the PP County family reunion. But could you tell me a little bit about how you're connected to PP?
Well, actually, I was born and brought up in what had been the PP settlement at one time. It was the last remnant of it, and so that's I guess my connection with the PPLs.
Okay, that you were born and you were raised there, right? That's great. Okay. Could you tell us about yourself and how you got involved in history?
Well, as I said, I was born in what's known as the PP settlement, and it is so amazing in that so much history took place in the square mile area. So much history that became national in some sense. And just simply, I just have always had a love of history. I like a mystery for one thing. And I think histories and mysteries kind of go along together sometimes. And of course, the place that typifies the PP settlement is the Eden Baptist Church.
Uh-huh.
And that was where I found the Lord, was in the Eden Baptist Church. I went there, and before I was me, until I moved to town.
Then you said that you were, that there's a lot of history in PP. Could you tell us a little bit about that history that you found that's in PP?
Well, first of all, it seemed to be a place where formerly enslaved individuals collected, and others, some folks that had never ever been enslaved, just seemed to move there. It was like a magnet for one thing. And as the history, or as the settlement developed, it became important in the Underground Railroad. We had two African Americans that were very, very involved in the Underground Railroad that lived in the PP settlement. One being James Barnett, who came from Albemarle County, Virginia, and the other was Minor Muntz. And both of those gentlemen were heavily involved in the Underground Railroad. And it was also a place where some folks that had some, let's say, national notoriety, so to speak, moved there. The members of the Hemings family, Madison Hemings being one, who have been accepted as being the grandson, or being the son, I'm sorry, of Thomas Jefferson. And he made his home there in the settlement. Two of his children are buried in the church cemetery. Then there were those who just, they seem to have collected some amount of wealth, moved there. It is said that the original number of families that collected there, that in what is now the PP settlement, was the number of 13. And that those folks were excellent farmers. But a lot of them had come from the Charlottesville, or the Albemarle County region in Virginia. And they were so good at what they did, created problems for them. And some of the whites that had already been in the area got kind of jealous of the prosperity of their farms and the things that they endeavored in. And what I call the seeds of the KKK began to develop when they began to play dirty tricks on some of those families that settled there. And actually, it was so bad at one point that approximately 5 of the original 13 that moved away. One man in particular actually went back to Virginia. It was just too much. Seeds began in about late 1820s, and it just developed from there.
Oh my goodness. I understand that there was some freed, that many of the people that came to PP were already freed slaves.
Correct. That's correct. We know that some of them came there had, as we say, had always been free. Some had some limited enslavement, but seemed to have received at least their families had received their freedom early on. And the Barnett family, for instance, moved in. The brother of one of the Barnett, the wives of the Barnett, already lived there, coming in about 1828, 29. We also know from documents, neat thing about that, so many documents that prove these things. We know that a man by the name of Griffin Butler was there as early as 1823.
Wow.
Had purchased land.
You know what? When I thought about free slaves, I thought that until I started learning about your family history, I thought that free slaves would just had the same kind of freedom as the Caucasian people. And then I found out that they couldn't get married unless they had permission. They couldn't own a home. They couldn't work 2 jobs. There was a lot of restrictions on people that were free.
Absolutely. Most of those folks that came into Central and Southern Ohio are from either Virginia, naturally, since it was, and then the other state was from North Carolina. We know that laws in both of those states differed. For instance, in the state of Virginia, if you were free to receive your freedom, you had to be gone from that state within a year of your freedom, or you could be bound back into slavery. The laws in North Carolina was slightly different. They seemed to encourage the freed slave, the former slave. I know, as in my family, the oral history says we'd never been slaves, but back there somewhere, I heard there was a slave woman who had children by the master, which is, kind of a typical story. And that they lived and thrived actually in North Carolina until about 1850, when after the fugitive slave law began to be enacted. and they had farms, from what I'm able to find out, good sized farms too. And then there was a change in the politics, let's say, of the ruling class there, and things began to get to the point it made it difficult, let's say, to get education and those kinds of things. And so that's what sparked one part of my families to move to Ohio.
Oh, okay. Now, what you studied history, and what lessons have you learned? I mean, while studying, is there any lessons that you have learned while studying the history of PP and the history of your family?
I think if I put it into words, perseverance would be the word that typifies it. I used to go to Charlottesville, Virginia, once or twice a year to work on a project that I was a part of, and I would get in my Honda car with all the bells and whistles and all of that, and I'd go down 64, and I would think about how it was for my ancestors when they made their way north, some from Virginia, but some from North Carolina, over those mountains and following the rivers in their wagons and walking and all of the things they went through until they made it to what became their home in Ross and Pike County, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I used to think about that. I've gotten lost in my trusty Accord. How did they know where to go and what kept them on the way? So I think, and it had to be perseverance. They had to persevere, or they wouldn't have been able to make it.
Mm-hmm. And what, as you learn those lessons, what would you tell the young people in studying the history and also in as African Americans? Would you tell them about perseverance, or what would you tell the young people, the next generation?
Actually, I have different times working with young people. I've just simply told them the stories of the coming to Ohio, in particular, of those families from where they started, some right after they became free, and got their freedom and made their way north. Mm-hmm. I just told them about what it was like. I tried to get them to see and to imagine a wagon. This generation really can't even imagine what a wagon is like, but it's part of this. I oftentimes show pictures and that kind of thing. And then I've told them some of the stories that I found through my grandparents and all, and in my Davis family in particular, when they talked about how actually the women and children walked a lot of the way, while the some of the men drove the wagons, of course, and that type of thing. And to just think what it was like to have done that. And the other part of that is, you know where you started from, but you don't know where you're going. Sometimes all they had was some map work that whoever purchased the land was they were able to attend. But for the most part, they didn't know where they were going. Mm-hmm. And so, if you can imagine that, I want to surprise. And I mean, when I start out at point A, I want to know how I'm going to get to point B. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have lasted very long as one of those folks that made their way north, because a lot of what they encountered was the unknown. Yeah. And one of the other things I usually try to get across to young people, faith is so important, because it's big in our families. It was big in the PP settlement. Actually, the PP settlement at one time had 3 churches. Oh. So there was, of course, the East Baptist Church was the hallmark, because that had its beginnings in 1824, whereas there was the one called the Triumph Methodist Church, and then there was another one that was the church that they want Turkey Run, which I also believe Methodist also.
Oh my goodness! Now with the you started a museum in a church, didn't you?
Say again, please.
There was a museum that you were a part of that happened at the church. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, I'm a co-director and I'm a founder of the David Nickens Heritage Museum in Chillicothe, Ohio. It's adjacent to the First Baptist Church, and actually the building is owned by the church. It houses 4 major exhibits at present time. It houses the African American woman in the 19th century. It houses the Underground Railroad. It also has the Black Church in America with an emphasis on civil rights. And then the last one is African Americans in the military.
Ooh.
And it's open today. We're about, I guess 10 years old now. We have been told that there isn't anything like it else in the state of Ohio. Wow. So we've been very busy, and which we are thankful for. We're associated with First Baptist, and our pastor understands the importance of legacy in the Christian life. And so it's located at 71 West 4th Street in Chillicothe.
Could you repeat that again? It was at what's is that?
71 West 4th Street in Chillicothe.
In Chillicothe, Ohio. Oh, okay. Now, how are you funded? How is the museum funded?
Donation
only. And how long have you been in existence?
About going between 8 and 10 years.
About 10 years.
Because, we had to take the whole year off, pandemic and things like that. But we had our beginning we just started with 1 exhibit.
Oh, wow.
And that became as of one of our members at that time was a professor at Ohio University, Chillicothe, and she taught a class called Black Family. And she used to have several of us come and speak to her students. And on one occasion, especially things that had to do with Black women.
Mm-hmm.
On one of the occasions, I know I was speaking, and one of the ladies asked the question. She said, "Where can we get more information about this?" Now, 10 years ago, there was even less on the internet than there is now. There was almost nothing that dealt with that. And so after we had that class, I said to Renee, that was the girl's name, I said, "Wouldn't it be nice if they let us use that house next door?" We both went to First Baptist. If they'd let us use that house next door to just put together a room of an exhibit of African American women with, and all the things we could find, books and all that, so that there would be a place that people could come and do some research. And of course, we had to petition the church, as you do. And I know how to do that thing I used to hate to do when I was teaching, and that was to write. You had to write up your all your goals and all of that stuff, which we did. And the board said, "Well, why don't you just take the whole house?" Well, we playing overjoyed, and we did, but we didn't start with the women's room. We started with the Underground Railroad room, because we knew the schools were very hungry to find resources to help teach that particular subject. And so that was our very first exhibit that went in. And after about a year or so, we put the second exhibit in, which was the African American woman in the 19th century. And it goes all the way back to when African American women first came to the Ohio Valley, with some of them on their own, but a lot of them with their formerly enslaved individuals or their former masters, and what life was like for them, and what they were important in the building of not only Ross Pike in the Chillicothe area, but also in the building of the country. And we found 30. It was hard to draw the line as to who to pick, because we found so many wonderful women that had done more than you could even imagine at the time period in which they lived. Mm-hmm. All of the amazing he did, because that they contributed to life in America. Some of them, right from the county where we live, for instance, the first African American female doctor from Frankfort, Ohio, and things that she did, and there were just so many of them. And then when we got finished, we just finally listed about 30 more that we didn't have room to put on in the exhibit itself. And so that's going to be kind of exciting because it chronicles the development of the African American woman through the ages.
That's amazing. That's simply amazing. Now, you have an event coming up. I mean, your family has an event. How important is it for family members to come to the event, and what was do? Could you talk a little bit about that, when it is?
So you're talking about the PP Hills reunion, right? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Going to be in September, second Saturday and Sunday in September. I don't really know the dates right now. I just always go by the first and by the Sunday thing. What it was, it started out because we had several families that would have reunions independently over the years and have kept going with reunions. And we realized there were so many families, sometimes because of size, sometimes because they had moved so far away, that wanted to get together, but didn't have a vehicle to help do that. And so it came to some folk, Shirley Nolan being one of them, that it would be good if we just put our resources together and come up with a big reunion that celebrated all the families that wanted to be involved. And it's been called the PP Hills Reunion, and that's what we're going to do this year. We had a similar one, I don't know, it was maybe 10, 11 years ago, and it was so popular, and it was wonderful because in some cases it actually brought some families back together, and because they came and they got reacquainted, let's say, and some of them even discovered where others had moved and all of that. And so it was quite a thing, and especially I think for our young people, because our young people don't have a clue usually who they are and what on whose backs actually I say they stand.
Yes, I remember. You remember Shay Banks? Shay Banks was related to Sally Hemings. Shay Banks Young.
Oh yes, I know. I say on whose backs we stand, but yes, I knew Shay very well. In fact, I had the privilege of bringing Shay down and took her through the hills and showed her where her grandfather Madison Hemings lived.
Yeah,
really, where at that time was called the Emmett House, and it was where when Madison first came to Ohio, he was a wonderful carpenter and joiner, and he had built the staircases and the doors and whatnot in that establishment. Had the privilege of taking her there, and they showed her, and she just simply said, oh, okay. And then of course to the Eden Church, she was interested in that, in the cemeteries, and then all of that we had. So yes, I knew she very well.
Yes, I remember when she went down there, she came back and told all of us about it. She was so excited that she was down there. And it's so good. It's awesome that you're bringing everybody that lived there, back together as a community.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I think so too.
Yes. A lot of times our neighbors are just like our family. It's almost it's divinely connected. They stay with us all our lives. When you were neighbors back in the time that we were growing up. So that is so wonderful that you're doing that. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell people about the PP or that we may have missed on this interview?
Well, I think if there was anything, I would say that people need to be aware of their local histories, whatever it is, because for them, usually in those local histories, we find nuggets that help us understand who we are and how our families sometimes have developed, and why they did what they did. For instance, as in a lot of communities, there began to be what we would call falling away. Well, people needed to know the reason for that was there was a national, what do you call it when there's a downturn in the economy? Regression. There was, farmers always get hit first, and because the community was a farming community, actually they were very much hit by that. we found some records of where families had to sue each other for cash, and there were court suits for as low as $1.50, which we wouldn't even sneeze at today. But because the cash flow had become so horrible, they just had to do what they had to do. Farms had become to be what we called farmed out because they had been farmed continuously without being replenished. And so we found that some of the families had to move in order to get work or to move in a situation where they could continue to support their families. And so you see one by one where families began to move out and go to other places. We know that a number of folks from the PP settlement went to places like Xenia, Frankfurt, and of course Columbus, another place where quite a few moved to. And so from that, then the settlement began to what we would call decline. Although as a child, which was 100 years ago, I guess, when we went, Eden Baptist Church still was going great guns. I mean, every Sunday it would be filled with, people, and it had a lot of young people and all of that. So even on the last part of the settlement, it still was a force within that larger community because people always talked about the PP settlement and the Eden community and all of that. So I think that's the story, is that whatever your local community might be, you need to know how it developed, because sometimes it helps you to know how your own kinfolks, as they say, developed also.
And it seems as though in your history, the church played such an important role on the keeping the foundation of families and things together. Would you say that, particularly Eden?
Absolutely. It was the church. First of all, it's where the leadership came from, because the ministers that passed through
became like the leaders in one sense of the community. Now, you have to understand, though, ministers or pastors of the church in that time was a little different than it is now. A lot of the pastors that went through there were what we would call itinerant. In other words, a lot of times they served more than one church. They also was the leadership that the people looked to. And if the person at that time was progressive, there was a lot of progress in the church and church family. We believe, and there's some records that indicate that the same man that was the founder of First Baptist Church in Chillicothe in 1824 was also responsible for the founding of Eden Baptist Church in the same year of 1824. And so as you go along through the history, you will see where the ministers that you see someplace else pop up. In other words, their leadership. I mean, as early as the early 1840s, the church, meaning Eden, was fellowshipping with other churches in what they called the convention movement. Among the African American churches in the 1830s, there was a spirit of unity and coming together, where a lot of the churches that were being developed in had conventions. And sometimes this is where ideas were exchanged. This is right in the heart of slavery, of course, and this was very important in the whole abolitionist movement, is when those churches came together and, of course, acted as leaders. We have found that the very earliest written indication of serving in one of those conventions, it mentioned going to a convention in Adams County. Now, this was in 1848. At that time, and I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, when going back that early 1848, and going to another church. Adams County is over the hill now, but it was a little time to get there at that time. Adams County, Brown County, because little Brown County and Scioto County, so it's southern, and even for the Eden folk. But I think the other thing is that it was the place where ideas could flourish. I already talked about farming and that type of thing. But as the church developed, and especially in the 20th century,
going from the world wars to one thing, and yet we saw a paper, a thing, notice in the paper, my cousin said this to me actually, where after World War I and the church was coming back, he had along with one of the churches in Milan County, he had like a reception or a special service where they highlighted those men that had served in World War I. And then going through the Depression, which was hard for everyone, it was the church that they was going. In the church, there were classes taught, night classes taught, which was important because this added and enhanced the education on our people. Because in many cases, especially with the boys that were African American boys, got very little education because they were expected to be on the farm to help with the farming. They were it was no from the fact. I know in my own father's family, he talks about how there were quite a few boys, and how early in the morning they had to get up to complete activities on the farm, even before they went to school. And then in their case, the bus didn't pick them up. They had to walk to certain places to meet the bus and be transported to a local school.